I think in this country we've been sleepwalking during the last 38 years and passed this problem without really coming to grips with how dire and compelling it is. And I think ABC should be congratulated for spurring what I hope will be a year-long debate on this issue. But it's my unhappy duty to point out that the reality is much worse than what has been portrayed in this movie. And this new emerging reality has significant policy implications. The nuclear winter that will follow even a small nuclear war, especially if cities are targeted, as they almost certainly would be, involves a pall of dust and smoke, which would reduce the temperatures not just in the northern mid-latitudes, but pretty much globally to sub-freezing temperatures for months. In addition, it's dark. The radiation from radioactivity is much more than we've been told before. Agriculture will be wiped out. And it's very clear that beyond the 1 or 2 billion people who would be killed directly in a major nuclear war, 7,000 megatons, something like that, the overall consequences would be much more dire. And the biologists who've been studying this think that there is a real possibility of the extinction of the human species from such a war. 3 quick points coming out of the previous discussion. First of all, there is a kind of threshold. It's fuzzy, but it's somewhere around 1,000 strategic weapons at which the nuclear winter could be triggered. If that's the case, it seems to me that the only prudent policy is to get well below that threshold so that no concatenation of computer failure and communications malfunctions and madness in high office could kill everybody on the planet. That seems to me elementary planetary hygiene as well as elementary patriotism. You don't want to have a circumstance in which we can end the human endeavor. Now, I think that with 18,000 strategic warheads in the world, we have 18 times at least more weapons than are needed to trigger this catastrophe. If you were well below 1,000 warheads, you would still have an adequate strategic deterrence. And I believe just as slavery was once in the world and people considered it impossible to change and it was everywhere. Well, now we have a world in which there's virtually no chattel slavery. Conventional expectations about what is inevitable can be changed if there's political will. And I think that the existence of this catastrophe can provide a political will. Now, just one more thing. We heard from Secretary Schultz in answer to your question, Ted, that it wasn't true that the Reagan administration was building up weapons, that in fact they had reduced weapons, and he mentioned a figure of 1,000 in Europe. Now, those 1,000 weapons in Europe are tactical weapons, not strategic weapons. They are largely obsolete weapons, and they are forward-based weapons, which means that they are vulnerable to capture in case of an attack. Now, what the administration is really doing, according to the Congressional Budget Office, is increasing the inventory of strategic warheads from 9,000 in the United States to 14,000. We are going in the wrong direction. Well, on the space-based systems, for them to have any adequacy to stop a significant strike, they have to have a technology which does not exist today, which the best experts in the field say cannot exist. In any case, something which would cost enormous amounts of money, that would have to be deployed on a absolutely unprecedented scale, and which is vulnerable to the simplest kinds of countermeasures. So my sense is that the ballistic missile defense system is being talked about, and there are a variety of them, and obviously we don't want to get into the details, is dangerous, because it lulls us into thinking that we can get away from this problem without the kinds of confidence building and stabilizations that Dr. Kissinger and Secretary McNamara have talked about. The freeze, which you quite properly point out, is supported, according to opinion polls and votes by the majority of the American people. I think it would be an excellent first step. It tends to prevent the introduction of further destabilizing modernization, and it would almost certainly be followed, as in the Kennedy-Hatfield resolution, by an agreement on a annual percentage drop in nuclear weapons. And if that's at the 5 to 10% a year level, which is what it's talked about, that would get us a long step up on getting to this threshold I talked about. In this discussion, there's been a sense that you can't change things, that getting down even by a factor of 2 in decades is the most you could possibly hope for. I'd like to read a quick quotation from General Douglas MacArthur. He said, "The masses of the world are far ahead of their leaders in this subject. I believe it is the massed opposition of the rank and file against war that offers the greatest possible hope that there shall be no more war." And then Dwight Eisenhower said something very similar. He said, "People in the long run are going to do more to promote peace than our governments. Indeed, I think that people want peace so much that one of these days governments had better get out of their way and let them have it." Imagine a room awash in gasoline, and there are 2 implacable enemies in that room. One of them has 9,000 matches. The other has 7,000 matches. Each of them is concerned about who's ahead, who's stronger. Well, that's the kind of situation we are actually in. The amount of weapons that are available to the United States and the Soviet Union are so bloated, so grossly in excess of what's needed to dissuade the other, that if it weren't so tragic, it would be laughable. What is necessary is to reduce the matches and to clean up the gasoline.